Well, welcome to today's show. This is episode 279, 10/30/25. Today's episode will be on the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or the PCE. Now, this is your status chat, my weekly video blog. We try to spend a few minutes, not too terribly much, just kind of hitting some major events. Our real estate market does seem to be fairly stable in most cases, so we reach out to find some economic things and maybe take some of the pressure and fear out of your day. So, as always, you can find the status chats at the QR code above my gray noggin that we have up there, and you can find this episode and previous episodes. Now, today we did have the PCE come out. And of course, I can tell you that we waited for the PCE so that we would have something today. But that would be a bit of a fib, because yesterday I was working early trying to get so much done during the day, and I actually stood up too long and had a terrible back trouble with the sciatica. It's just part of growing in my late 30s, as I am today. Late 30s. So anyway, I thought, well, we'll wait for tomorrow when the PC is due out anyway, because I'm sure everybody and their dog has been crowing about the recent change to target rates. That really was a surprise to no one unless you've been hiding under a rock. Now, the thing about that is we have seen some adjustments. Big news during the week was Amazon's cutting people, but that was due to AI. We knew that was going to come, and we just didn't know when. And we've seen a few other things go on, but the people who were previously crowing that the party goes on forever and the road never ends, or if I don't have that backwards, last administration now are doing everything they can to bum everybody out. And what I did last administration is you got to look at the data without having a particular bias, because we get an anchor bias. If we get an opinion, we want to make something that's going to kind of come in there and support what we already believe. That's just human nature. So what I want to talk about, we'll start with the BEA, and we want to look at the personal consumption outlays. But let's take it one step back and look what we have been doing. Roll up. Let me roll that up. You caught me in preview mode. All right. In May, we were 2.5, 2.6, 2.6, 2.7. And you see we were accelerating. We're actually getting a little bit more inflation. And yet, when we do that, the highly political Fed is deciding that they're going to go ahead and take any kind of bad news as an excuse to cut the rate further. You know, we had a full percentage point knocked off last year right before the election season, and of course inflation started taking back up. We already saw it ticking back up, and here we're going. Like I said, since we knew it was going up, we're going to cut rates again, which will most assuredly accelerate that. But they'll blame it on the tariffs and the rebalancing of trade, which works to our benefit. And if we have time, if our runtime's not going too far, we might just talk a little bit about the soybeans that were also in the news earlier. News release. Here we are. The personal income and outlays for August. We're not going to read much of this, but we'll hit this just on the top. All right, it says personal income increased 95.7 billion. Or a little less than 0.5% monthly rate. Disposable income, DPI, disposable income actually increased 86.1 billion, also the same rate by nearly almost 0.5%. All right, so we got that. Let's go look at our little disposable income. You see our little lovely graphs from February. We're down, we're up. April shows that we went negative. We're back up in June and July to the positive, and August we're to the positive. Again, we cannot just pick and choose what we want to look at to give us our support for our either overly negative or overly positive opinions. We have to look at the facts as they are. So it looks like, well, okay, not a big deal, not a big deal at all. So let's talk a little bit about this whole thing with soybeans, because In my feed out there amongst my circle of people, which includes many people on the left as well as on the right, because I consider myself in the middle, although I'm accused from each side of being, on the other extreme because I don't necessarily line up with them. The reality is we had big news that, well, Trump is pooping all over the soybean farmers, and the farmers were all for Trump, and so this is some fine how do you do and repayment of that support. When the reality is we've got more than just soybean farmers. We got everybody in the nation to look out for, not just those. And so we see that soybean farmers find relief in U.S. trade truce with China. The fact is, China has blinked on the world stage. They're trying to play hardball, but they're a developing nation. And quite honestly, they may not be developing as much as Brazil, but they are still developing, and their recent growth has come in the last several decades. So they're very much depending on the American market to feed them and to buy their stuff so that they have jobs, so that people get paid, so that people can buy food, and they just have an economy, and it's not immune either. The difference is with the Communist Party, they don't suffer, the people do. Kind of reminds me of what we're being treated to with the current lockout by the Democrats. They're just not wanting to do the continuing resolution. They're hurting the poor people. And I don't want to quote System of a Down, the old rock band, but the reality is why do they always send the poor? Why is it always the poor that suffers for the people, the money makers making their money? So let's go back to this real quick. We see that there is a deal. Now, we've had some question about, well, why aren't they buying more? Well, if you look at the history of soybean sales to China, you'll see that we used to be the big dog on the block, but we're not anymore. And so they can maybe hold that out up to a point. They still get 70% of their imports from Brazil. But now, let me ask you a simple question. You ready? Have you heard of OPEC? How much of the United States oil does the oil producers in the Middle East have to our total supply? Very little. But it's enough that their news can affect our pricing. What do you think happens when China decided they were going to not buy American soybeans? How long do you think that worked before it was making a bad situation worse? We just need to work together. But we need to work together where things are mutual. You might hear me when I talk about real estate. I have to remind people sometimes. We have buyers think that they want to make sure the seller makes nothing on the house. They want it all to go in their favor. Well, we have some buyers that want to make everything in their favor. When the reality is, good business doesn't happen unless somebody gets something out of it on each side. If you're not going to get anything but a butt whooping out of something, would you be inclined to willingly engage in that? And the answer is no. So in the world of international trade that we have, the trade balance, each side needs to get a little something. It can't be one-sided. And if you've been getting over on someone and suddenly they want a refairing of the deals, you might kick it first. But, sometimes, you cut off your nose to spite your face. All right. Are we ready to move on to our weekly numbers? All right, let's do that. All right. Now, we want to compare, see if our numbers are grossly impacted by all of these negative Nates out there trying to harsh our mellow? I would say probably not. Last week, 10/23, we were up in availability, 29,975. We were 42.77 in the under contracts, but still taking offers. But the ratio between them didn't change. It stayed at 14%. Now, if we look at what happens this week, although it is one day late when I take your numbers, we see that we have 10/30 of 25 today, one day late, 30,000 054 in the availables. That's still going up, but look at the difference between 29,975. That's hardly much at all. And the 40,232 in the under contract, still taking offers, still taking showings, as it were. Backup offers. What do we see? 14. The ratio, the integer ratio between those two numbers has not changed. So I would say we're not really seeing dramatic things as of today. So that's it for today. Hope I haven't gone too long. Like I said, I personally think fairly positively about our future. I think things are, we have our challenges, but when is today different than yesterday? Same day, different game, right? Same day, different batter, different ball, but we're still playing the ball. All right, we'll see you next week.